Hey guys, welcome back. It's Neon. I'm going to talk a little bit about comic books. You remember those, right? We used to talk about comic books here on the channel, but we haven't really talked about it too much lately because there's really not a whole lot to talk about. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about in the comic book industry right now, other than it seems to be, from the outside, seems to be sort of in dire straits right now. You know, disclaimer, I used to work in comics. My wife and I used to work off and on in comics. Never worked in comics full-time because it was never really financially feasible. But we did work on a number of licensed titles. Did enjoy our time in comic books. We got invited to conventions and you know, it was just, you know, we had a good old time back in the day. But I do have a question, a burning question for those of you who are comic book pundits. You know, I don't know where the comic books are being sold. So I put this out on Twitter last night. I said, riddle me this. All these comic book shops are closing, and they are. And we're going to talk about that. It's an almost weekly occurrence. It is. It's almost like every week or every other week we've got news of a comic shop closing. Some of them have been in business for a very long time and they're going out of business. But the industry pundits keep claiming that comics are fine. They do. They're always like, comics are good. Comics are fine. Everything's good here. Comic sales are up. I don't know what you're talking about. Some of them said that comics are making a comeback. So I want to know where all the books are being sold, right? If the comic shops are closing, down, where are all these comic books being sold? You know, I asked a question and some people said they wound up at Ollie's, which I tend to agree with because I've been to local Ollie's here in the Pittsburgh area, and there's just like tons and tons and tons of comic books on clearance. It's crazy. But what prompted this was yet another store closing. This is Chameleon Comics and Cards in Lower Manhattan. Now, part of what killed off Chameleon was the rent. So this is coming from the New York Times. Endangered spaces. I think it should be endangered species. Comic shops are an endangered species. This is the second or third, like you know, New York comic shop that has closed this year that I can remember. There was one in the Village, I think, that closed too. Was it St. Mark's? I think it was St. Mark's. So superheroes couldn't save a comic book clubhouse in Lower Manhattan. Loved by Wall Streeters and scruffy comic book junkies alike, because, you know, all comic book junkies are scruffy. Chameleon Comics was a clubhouse in the financial district. So their glum faces told the story. Chameleon, you know, they were talking about what happened here. Their glum faces told the story. Chameleon was shutting its doors after nearly 30 years in Manhattan's financial district. Shop was like home to me, said Mr. Wynn, a paralegal. See, he's probably not that scruffy, who works nearby and had grown used to his steady fix of Chameleon's eclectic selection of comic books, graphic novels, baseball cards, and action figures. These kinds of comic shops are shutting down left and right. That's in the New York Times. Right in the New York Times. These kind of comic shops are shutting down left and right in the New York Times. Fourth paragraph. Fourth paragraph in the New York Times this weekend. Beyond the shop's merchandise, the scene was what really attracted some steady regulars, from scruffy comic book junkies in search of bargains to well-dressed Wall Streeters looking to drop serious money on the store's impressive selection of collectible baseball cards. They all shared a common despondency during the shop's last week before close on March 31st. Store's owner, Steve Wu, age 50, said business had been declining for years and that he could no longer afford to stay open now that his lease was ending and his landlord was raising the rent significantly. Now, this happened in LA too with Meltdown Comics. As of my recording this video, Meltdown Comics was also sort of the victim of a major rent increase, but I don't think there have been any plans to bring back Meltdown Comics. Meltdown Comics was a huge loss for LA comic book fans. And that was the one where I kind of said, hey guys, we got a problem. Meltdown's going out of business. We got a problem. To which I had a well-respected comic book media pundit say, no, it's fine. Comics are okay. They're fine. Comics are fine. Mr. Wu would not disclose the exact amount, said the increase would put his rent well over 10 grand. 10 grand. Business, he said, never quite rebounded after September 11th terrorist attacks several blocks away. He also added, younger people do not, okay, this is very important. Younger people do not seem to collect comics like older generations did. This is very true. Now, I think what's going on with comic books now, a lot of people are blaming politics and, sort of a decline in quality of comics. I think that partially plays into it. I think what's going on is that younger people are not buying comics. They're into other media, comic books, physical comic books. They're just not interested. So what's going on is that the readers you have left are being alienated, again, by the content, by the creators, going out to Twitter and saying stupid stuff. So you're not really going to grow your readership, so you better hold on to the readers you have, right? So the shop is one of many small service-style businesses that caters to the workforce that fills the area on weekdays. Inside it was hardly a charming space, sparsely decorated with worn beige tiles and large fluorescent lights, along with a large inflatable Spider-Man doll hanging from the ceiling. That sounds like a pretty typical comic shop to me. The drab decor only seemed to make the colorful comic books and graphic novels pop out even more from their display cases, which had small signs issuing edicts such as no reading and "this is not a library." That's kind of tight, but okay. The store's last days, shoppers sought to take advantage of the store's everything must go sale. These stores are what make New York great. Yeah, New York has lost several comic shops over the last couple months. So we became part of the community. A lot of people came here just to hang out and get away from work. But with a store like this, the profit margin is very low. It's not like a Chanel store where you can make a few sales a day. He tried looking for other retail space in downtown Manhattan, he said, but the rents are just too crazy. Yeah. I mean, this is part of it. It's like, look, they've never been big business for retailers, the margins are very tight. So when anything goes wrong with the comic book industry, it just throws a wrench into the whole thing. And when you're in a place like Manhattan, your rents are high. LA, your rents are high. San Francisco. Now, again, I want to know though, where are these comic books? If comic books are making a comeback and they're making this big comeback, like so many comic book blogs are trying to say, and so many Twitter pundits are trying to say that comics are making a comeback, where are they selling the comics if all the shops are going out of business? I'd like to know. I really would like to know, because it's, I'm not terribly good at math, but it seems to me that if there are fewer comic book shops in which to sell your comic books, then your numbers should be dipping. And it's not just the comic books going out of business, it's also comic shops changing focus. Now, there are a couple of comic shops that I've purchased comic books from over the years that have flat said they're not going to buy new issues. They're only going to deal in back issues and collectibles. They're no longer ordering new issues. So we've got comic shops that have gone out of business completely and other comic shops that just aren't ordering new comics. So why is everybody saying that comics are on the upswing again? I don't understand this logic, at least not the monthly books. Now, we talked before about these giant stories, these DC giants, and I think that this is actually DC's life raft. I think they're going to try to produce more material outside of the comic book direct market, and retailers complained. They were complaining that they weren't getting the stories, and now they are getting the stories, because apparently the traditional LCS floppy format. No, they said floppy. I thought I thought they were against using the word floppy because it was derogatory, but they're using the term floppy in their article. It's Superman Up in the Sky, written by Tom King and art by Andy Kubert. And it's this was a story that was in the Walmart Giant books, which I love the Walmart Giant books. We actually did a review of a few of them, and I think it's a really good deal. It's like $5 for 100 pages of comics, mostly comics. It's like hardly any ads at all in these things. It's actually a pretty good deal. So the retailers were complaining because I think DC's trying to keep them happy while also building this life raft. I think DC realizes that there are fewer comic shops, and if they're going to sell comic books and justify their existence, they got to go where the people are, and the people are at Walmart. So that's where they're going to go. Now, the other thing here is graphic novels, right? So everybody's talking about graphic novels being sort of the savior of comics, maybe as an art form. I think graphic novels are, probably going to be left standing if the direct market completely implodes. I think we'll still have graphic novels. What they're doing is they're sort of, and I had people on Twitter tell me this too, that they're kind of using the renewed interest in manga to say that the comic book industry is healthier, but they're not making a distinction between the comic book industry and traditional publishing, right? So according to this article from Publishers Weekly, they said that actually graphic novel sales are up. I guess they're up. So, but again, they keep saying that Diamond's doing well. I don't get this. Let's talk about comic books. This is for 2018. We know it was a good year for comics, as reported by Diamond Comic Distributors. We know it was a good year for comics. The largest North American comics distributor said that periodical sales were up by 2% in dollars sold. That's very important. Dollars, when you're charging $7-8 for a comic book, you know. Before they dive in, they want to emphasize here the numbers announced by Diamond measured dollars, not units. That is true. Units are more relevant than dollars because they tell you what people are buying, not just how much the books cost. This is very true. So let's shift now to units from this point on. When you combine Diamond's unit numbers with those of BookScan, of course, is used to track all comic book sales, to track graphic novel sales. Graphic novel market is up by 11.7%. This is a marked difference from the 1.3% increase seen across all print publishing in the U.S. and indicates healthy growth for the category. But it's basically, if you read this article, it comes down to Dogman. Dogman, which is it really a comic book? It's kind of a young adult thing. It's kind of in the same vein as Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is a comic book or a young adult or middle grade book, depending on who you ask. So it's not really a traditional comic book, right? So the different results. Comics and graphic novel sales are hard to come by. Yeah, because they hide them. I think they're hiding them. I think the publishers are hiding the numbers because they want to justify their existence. And the numbers that are available to us often present a biased picture. Most comics retailers and comics professionals use Diamond sales charts because those are the only resource available to them, but drawing conclusions from that info is a bit like seeing someone's kitchen and assuming that tells you what the rest of the house looks like. Diamond Comics record sales in the direct market, a network of about 2,000 comic shops and declining, right? Buy mostly non-returnable product at wholesale prices. These comic shops sell a mix of traditional comic books and prose books and graphic novels. So taking into account the three lists of data, we're talking about BookScan, we're talking about Diamond and Scholastic Book Fairs. Diamond's numbers for the direct market, blah, 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 blah. The big jump for kids' graphic novels, 2 words, Dogman. Dogman, published by Scholastic's graphics imprints. Important to understand the strength of this property. Yeah, Dogman, we joked before we did a video on comic numbers and we looked at what the top graphic novels were for 2018. It was Dogman. I mean, Dogman it's basically the new Wimpy Kid. It is outselling pretty much everything in at least in the book fairs and whatnot. Next up was the usual holder of most units sold. It was Viz Media. The manga leader continues to control and command the US manga market. Of the top 40 manga sold, all of them were published by Viz. It's worth noting that the manga category, which often goes underestimated, captured 26% of all graphic novels sold in this country last year. This is very important. Manga is definitely coming back. I think as people are getting burnt out on Western comics, people are going back to manga. They're going back to anime. This is why we're seeing, I think, an attack on anime, an attack on manga by some people who just don't like that they can't control the content of these foreign comics, right? This is really interesting stuff. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of the video and you can go out there and read it yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing. It's I don't think comics are doing better. I think we have a couple of breakouts like Dogman. Manga is on the upswing, but comic shops are going out of business. They're going out of business at a shocking rate. So I want to know where people are buying their damn comic books from if you can't go to a comic shop and buy them. This is a problem. This is definitely a problem. So, feel free to answer my question because I really would like to know. because we don't have any comic shops close to us. The nearest comic shop for us is like 45 minutes away now, and we used to have 2 or 3 within a 10-minute drive. So I will talk to you later. This has been Neon for Clownfish TV. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, rants, gaming videos, art videos, and more. Goodbye. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.